Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the DC Capstone Report. It's great to be with you for another year here in 2022 as we discuss the Alabama Crimson Tide football team. Well, it's the beginning of fall camp, and this is our first podcast of the year. Lance and I are sure glad to have you all listening this year. Glad to be back with us. Lance has had put up some great content over the off season on his two other sites. So I encourage you to go to RollTideBama.com or FreelancePictures.com and look for some great content that Lance continues to put up. There's some telephone schedule screensavers there that you can take benefit from, looks, and pick out one and download for your phone. So I just want to thank Lance Shores for all the things that he does to make this podcast possible. You don't hear from him very often, but hopefully this year we got something new coming. We're going to try to do some live shows the week of the football games, and we'll tell you more about that. That comes to pass, and hopefully Lance and I both will be on Facebook Live on our Facebook page, and you'll be able to chime in with us and chat with us about the upcoming Alabama football games. Well, today on the podcast, as we begin looking at fall camp, we're going to take a look at the things that happens mostly in fall camp in the early stages, and that is building the team chemistry, the team, what is the team identity, and kind of see where this team is headed, this Alabama football team in 2022. To do that, we're going to have to discuss the new additions, the new coaches, and the old coaches that are still here and what that means, the new players that are moving in either by transfer or the new freshmen that are coming in, and finally the overall team chemistry as that develops early in the football camp. So today on the podcast, in the first segment, we're going to discuss the new coaches and how they mesh with the older coaches that are still here. In the second segment, we're going to discuss the new players that are coming in and how they are going to mesh and meld with the older players that are still here. And in third and final segment, we'll discuss the overall team chemistry and the team dynamics that you want to develop during fall camp.
You're listening to the DC Capstone Report. The DC Capstone Report is featured each Tuesday morning on the Martin Houston Show at Tide 100.9. You can listen live at Tide100.9.com.
Well, this is DC with the DC Capstone Report. We're back here on the first segment today. We're going to discuss the new coaches and the old coaches and how they developed help develop team chemistry in fall camp. So far, we've had one week of fall camp under our belt, not a full week, but this past Sunday, we were made available to hear from Coach Saban, the offensive coordinator Bill O'Brien, the defensive coordinator Pete Golding, and it's probably once or twice a year you get to hear from the coordinators, and we get to hear from them in fall camp, and then we usually get to hear from them at the end of the year as we're playing in a championship game. But this year, it was really important to see and talk about, as Coach Saban puts it, the team consistency and what he appreciates in the consistency. And one of the things that I think he talked about in his time with the media yesterday was being able to have a defensive coordinator and an offensive coordinator that is holdover from the year before in Pete Golding and Bill O'Brien, and what kind of consistency that brings to the program. And he discussed that. So I think it was important, as we heard yesterday from Bill O'Brien, he spoke and said that he had gave Coach Saban a commitment. Although he had had some opportunities to go other places, he had gave Coach Saban a commitment, and he was going to stick to that commitment because he loved coaching for the best coach there was in college football. He had learned so much here. And he had so many things to do with the great talent that he had coming back on offense that he wanted to do. And he, as like everyone has said, just didn't feel good about where things ended last year and losing the fourth quarter of the championship game. So it was great to hear from Bill O'Brien. I think what Coach Saban talks about in our offense, the consistency, is it lets the same people and personalities be in control this year, and they have a different, just a makeup of a relationship with the players. So Coach O'Brien has a relationship with Bryce Young that'll carry over into this year, and with others on the team as well as this offense continues to build. He also talked about defensive consistency and having Pete Golding, I think now is coming into his fifth year. Pete Golding has definitely matured in his role as a defensive coordinator. I know there's been a lot of people that have been negative about Pete Golding out there. I'm not one of them. I've always been positive about him and about the job he was doing. I think this year he comes in with what can arguably be the best opportunity of a defense that he's ever had to coach at Alabama. But having that consistency of Pete Golding continuing to be available to lead this defense, I think will really bode well for the team as they begin to come together this year. Well, just as he talked about consistency, he also said that sometimes turnover brings in new blood to the coaching ranks that helps build relationships with players, brings in new ideas, new energy, a new positive energy, and new excitement to the program. Coach Saban talked about 4 new coaches that he thinks has made an impact already in fall camp. Number 1 was Joe Cox. Joe Cox was a new tight ends coach. Tight end is a place that's thin. As we learned that already in fall camp, there was an injury to our leading tight end candidate coming back, Cameron Latou. He's have a knee injury, thought to be serious, but he's going to be out a couple of weeks. But that's given Joe Cox an opportunity to bring his idea of tight end play and stamp it on the young talent that's coming in at that tight end position. So already Coach Saban names Joe Cox as a person who has stepped up and made some difference in the fall camp. He also named Coleman Hutzler as another addition of coach that's really shown up, and he's labeled as a special teams coordinator / outside linebackers coach. But Coach Saban really talked about what he's brought in the special teams, and I'm really looking forward to this. He said he's brought a new scheme, a new way to do things that really is going to improve Alabama's play on special teams, coverages, and return. So I'm kind of looking for that to see what it does and how it translates on the field. But Coleman Hutzler was another new coach that was named by Coach Saban. We need to kind of watch on what he brings to this program. Then he spoke about a coach named T-Rob. That's Tavarius Robinson, who comes in as a cornerbacks coach. Cornerback is one of the places on the team where you have much competition. But it looks like that Coach Robinson has brought a style of play, a personality of high energy and passion to this program, and it looks like it's translating down to the competition. Coach Saban talked about competition at the cornerback. It's 2 at each position and maybe more. You got Kool-Aid McKinstry and Terrion Arnold battling out in one cornerback spot. You got Kyrie Jackson battling out with Eli Ricks, another cornerback spot. You got Brian Branch that can plug and play in any position back there in the cornerbacks or safety. So it's just really good to hear him talk about T-Rob, or T-Rob as he calls him, but Coach Robinson as we know him as the cornerbacks coach, bringing in a different style of play and passion to that cornerback position. Can't wait to see how it translates on the field as well. I think the one position coach change that we thought could really make a difference in this team would be the offensive line coach. And Eric Wolford comes in as the new offensive line coach. And Coach Saban talked very highly of him yesterday and has in previous opportunities with the media too, of what he's brought to the offensive line. His passion, we've already seen how good he has been as a recruiter. He brings in a lot of knowledge. He's coached a lot of places. But it looks like that these young offensive linemen have really bought into what he's saying, and it is an opportunity to really string together and put together 5 great offensive linemen to put on the field that can really affect the play. So I think the addition of all these coaches, Joe Cox, Coleman Hutzler, Eric Wolford, and Tavarius Robinson, is set us up for a good fall camp to see how we come out of here. What kind of stamp or fingerprint are they going to put on this team that allow it to improve and get better from where they were last year? Well, it's DC with the DC Capstone Report, back with you here on the second segment. On the second segment, we're going to take it some new players that have come in. You know, Coach Saban was asked about the continuity of the team when you bring in new players and you plug them in to players that have already been there. And of course, he spoke about that in 2 ways. One is freshmen who are coming in, and 2 is transfers. And I think Coach Saban has said what I've always believed: when you bring a transfer in, you're bringing that transfer in to play into a system. If they can make that work, because you wouldn't have identified them or tried to get them unless they could play. But Alabama has some transfers that are coming in both on the offensive and the defensive side of the ball this year that'll have to mesh and meld with the other players that are on returning players. And then the other side of that is you have freshmen every year that get in. And Coach Saban spoke about that. It doesn't think it brings any disunity in the team. He thinks it solidifies the team because every year Alabama is playing freshmen. He talked about in the 2017 National Championship game, at the end of the game, when Tua made the pass to Devontae Smith, there were 6 freshmen on the field at the end of that game that won that national championship. So he talked about it's nothing different bringing in transfers than bringing in good freshmen that are going to compete for the game for opportunities to play. And he said it's no different this year. There are some new freshmen and some transfers that are competing for opportunity to play. We spoke on the offensive side of the ball and the transfers in. He talked highly of Jermaine Burton. He's a wide receiver that transferred in out of Georgia. He has got some playing time, played last year in the national championship game, made some good catches against Alabama, transfers in out of Georgia, is said to be competing for a starting job in the wide receivers. So look for him to make an immediate splash. He seems to be the real deal in the fall camp so far. He also talked about Tyler Harrell. He's a freshman. He's a transfer wide receiver who's out of Miami, but by way of Louisville University. He came in as a graduate transfer from Louisville, transferred in, and he's got speed enough to take the top off the defense. But Coach Saban spoke a little bit yesterday. He's had a little bit of inconsistencies in the fall camp, and he looks to kind of solidify that down if he's going to compete for a role in this starting wide receivers. And also the other one that hadn't spoke of a lot is the offensive tackle that transferred out of Vanderbilt. He's originally from Fort Lauderdale, St. Thomas Aquinas High School, had a great high school career, and then went to Vanderbilt. Very intelligent, 6'5", 317, plays the offensive tackle position. He's definitely one of the ones that's competing for a starting job of that starting 5 on the Alabama's offensive line. So he's been a well-seasoned addition to that offensive line. The lone transfer in for the defense is Eli Ricks, coming from IMG Academy, coming right out of LSU. He had all the talent in the world. Coach Saban spoke a little bit about him. He is in that battle for the cornerback position with Kyrie Jackson. But the only thing that's been holding him back is the significant injuries that he suffered and getting back that confidence and the ability to play every play. So I think he's working on that, working on some opportunities for him to be able to contribute on the defensive side of the ball, having a role, either trying to win that cornerback position or having a role at playing in one of the positions in the defensive backfield. So those transfers seem to be really working well in fall camp and have an opportunity to contribute this year. Of the signing class, there's been several people that's been mentioned. One name that you keep hearing is Aaron Anderson, a wide receiver out of New Orleans, came from Edna Carr High School there. He's 5'9", 184 pounds, really has some catching ability, some route running ability for a freshman. Really has some good opportunities for him to get on the field. Had a little setback here where he's had some injury issues and had some things done to try to correct some injuries. So he's been out for a little while now, but doesn't appear to be too serious. It doesn't appear that he'll be having a long-term effect on him. So look for him to try to come in and get some playing time at that wide receiver position. On the defensive side of the ball, from the freshmen that seem to be outstanding in practice or standing out in practice, we heard Pete Golden speak of 2, and one is Jihad Campbell at the linebacker position. He's 6'3", 225 out of IMG Academy. He has come in physically well, has really been in good shape, and he's been able to contribute at least in the fall camp as one of those people to compete for some playing time, maybe as a freshman, either on special teams or at the linebacker position. So look for the name Jihad Campbell as one of the freshmen that might be able to step up and make a difference this year. And the other freshman that everyone has been talking about, and Coach Golden talked about him yesterday, is Jaheim Otis. Jaheim is a 6'5" defensive lineman from Mississippi. It's a young man that Alabama, we learned yesterday, actually offered when he was in the 8th grade because of his stature. He'd grown so much. He had a lot of weight on him as a high school freshman, and Coach Golden was recruiting him and offered him in the 8th grade and continued that offer. He was a solid pick up in the recruiting class, but honestly, he had a little too much weight on him. He is a kid that's come in and taken advantage of the nutrition and the strength and conditioning program at the University of Alabama, and has really, really done well for himself. He shed a little over 70 pounds and got himself into a lean body type where he can really play and make some plays on offensive line. Coach Golding thinks that he can contribute. And with the defensive line, I'm sorry, I said offensive, I meant defensive line. The defensive line is a little more stacked at some positions, but it looks like as a freshman he can come in and contribute. And Coach Golden used the word twitch. It has a little twitch in him, which means that's that Christian Barmore type, that big body that can really rush and get in, not only stop the run, plug up holes, and occupy other blockers, but can also sometimes use that twitch to wiggle out and get to the quarterback. So look for Jaheim Otis to see if he can break in and make some type of play in that defensive line. Well, here in the third and final segment of the DC Capstone Report this week, we're talking about the fall camp. Alabama is in their first full week of fall camp, just finished it, starting their second week of fall camp. And the last thing we're going to talk about here is team chemistry, team identity. And I think that's something that we're still building. We don't have it built yet. Still building the team identity. What is going to be the identity of this team? And you hope that they come out of fall camp with an identity. One thing that we've heard talked about over and over and over is that the people, coaches, players alike, are not happy with the way the season ended last year. Even though Coach Saban said it was a rebuilding year, they had a lot of freshmen, a lot of young players. A lot of people go to the NFL. They felt like they didn't play their best in the last game of the year and lost that game in the fourth quarter to Georgia for the national championship. Matter of fact, they say they have the participation trophy sitting where they can all see it in the dining hall when they go in, so that it reminds them. So I think one of the identities of this team is retribution or redemption tour, revenge, if you will. That's the idea they got going for it. From the players that we've heard speak so far, like Will Anderson Jr. on defense and Bryce Young on offense, we have a whole group of players who really believe that they can go in and make a difference this year in something they did last year, change something. It's hard to say that the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback can be better, or the best defensive player in the nation can be better, but those two are the leadership that's leading this team to say, hey, we can do better. No matter what accolades we were attained last year, those are in the past now. They were great for that season, but now we can do better this season. We didn't finish like we wanted to. Let's finish this season on top like we want to. And I think that mindset from the top down, as it trickles down, if the freshmen and the upperclassmen who are holdovers from last year can buy into that type of identity, that you're never good enough, that you always work toward, and that's what I think Bryce Young and Will Anderson Jr. are bringing to that position. I think is something that I believe that can make the identity of this team meld together. Team chemistry is also working these new players into the position. One of the things that I didn't speak of when I talked about the new transfers was the running back, Jamar Gibbs, that transferred in out of Georgia Tech. I saved it to the end because I think it's a cog that's a key to the team chemistry. And Coach Saban spoke about it a little bit yesterday. That is, when you bring a player in, you want them to make the team better, but you want to make the other players in this room better. And I think that's exactly what's happened to our running back room. Our running back room was decimated with injuries last year. We had Brian Robinson, who's now gone on to play in the NFL, and then after him, you had two players that got hurt during the year, had significant knee injuries in Roydell Williams and Jace McClellan. Had two significant injuries to that running back room, and then you had another player that was coming off of a bad accident and had never kind of gotten things under his belt, never got to the place that he needed to get in order to get back on that, and he wasn't his same self, a running back that wasn't himself any of the year. So I think it's important that you understand that there's a lot of things going on in that running back room that need some leadership. So in comes Jamar Gibbs, and I think as Jamar Gibbs comes in, he brings in a different type of leadership. He comes from a program in Georgia Tech where he was the best offensive player on the team. He comes in with an opportunity to make a difference at the beginning, and he comes into a running back room that's needing some leadership. And so he comes in there and he makes the other players better. Well, how does he make the other players better? He plays his heart out in fall camp, and that's what he's done. Coach Saban said he's come in and made a difference in how he goes about what he does. He comes in, he works hard, he makes everyone around him better, and he brings a different dynamic. What's he bring? He brings a pass-catching ability out of the backfield. And that makes a difference in today's game. We didn't have a drop-down pass catcher that we could drop down and throw a safety valve last year. We had that in some instances, but we didn't have that player that could run that wheel route and put people behind him. You know, I think he makes the wide receiver room better. I look for Trey Sanders, that player who wasn't where he needed to be last year, to be better. I think he's taking advantage of the off-season workouts, the off-season nutrition to get himself in a position to be physically able to play. So between Jamar Gibbs and Trey Sanders, then Jason McClellan and Roydell Williams coming in, back in off of their injuries, see how they do. And then you got Jamarian Miller, a freshman, coming in. I think that, in a nutshell, in that room talks about team chemistry. The competition is there, but the competition rises so high that it makes the rest of the team better. It makes everyone better in the room. And I think that's kind of where you want this team to be as they work in the fall camp. Work together, work hard, don't be satisfied with accolades from last year. Come back with a decision in your mind you're going to work the best so that you can have your best performance. And all these new people coming in, raising the level of competition to a way of making everyone better. Well, that's it for the DC Capstone Report this week. Hope you've all enjoyed tuning in. Don't forget to check us out at dccapstonereport.com, DC Capstone Report Facebook page, or you can always follow me on Twitter at DavidCott50. Well, until next week, roll Tide.